Welcome to When Night Skies Are Down. This video is about some random thoughts, and it's titled White Privilege and the Problems with Defining It. To me, everyone basically has privilege in some way, form, or fashion. I don't believe most people can really see their own privilege. Not saying that they can't, but just in general. But seeing your own privilege is kind of like saying, okay, counting your blessings. It's also, I think we spend probably more time looking at other people's privileges and blessings, gifts and positions, and really not just appreciating what we already have. And to illustrate this, I made up an exercise. I want to call it the privilege test. So, step 1, write down all your privileges. Step 2, ask one friend and one coworker to list all the privileges they think you have. To make it easier, you can talk to 2 friends if you don't have a coworker. Step 3, compare all the results from each one. By today's standards, you should be able to list all your privileges and then some. But I don't think there's really too many people that can actually get all their privileges 100% correct. For a bonus round, step 4, ask a foreigner that has never lived in the U.S. and is from what is considered a poorer country, and then ask them what they think your privileges are as an American. If you're able to guess all the privileges from all these people, you are awesome and probably one in about 3 billion. Step 5, compare all your privileges to the people with white privilege to see how you compare. Step 6, ask them to name someone they feel is more privileged than they are, and if they would switch with them. Me personally, I see a lot of people like Warren Buffett. I mean, you name it, you can probably find somebody that has a privilege that you would like. That being said, I'm not really willing to be one of the people that would trade places with them if I could just swap places with them. And basically it's because Jesus had to die just to gain the position he's in, which means that privilege costs somebody something. Okay? And privilege is a loose definition, but we won't go into that right now. But in regard to privilege, I don't believe that most people can give up privilege without destroying their own lives. However, I do believe people can use their position to mentor and help others. The reason why I say this is because at one point in time, I gave up an opportunity because I felt somebody else was more deserving. And I still regret it to this day. But I think pausing in life to try to help somebody else is dangerous for the person that stops, especially depending on where you are in life. And it's also not a guarantee that the person that attempts to take that person's position will be successful. That said, I would rather climb as high as I can and help pull other people up through mentorship. But even as a mentee, the mentor can only tell you how they actually went and got in the position they got there, how they got into the position they're in. But that being said, you still have to do all the work to get to where, or at least they can tell you concepts, but you still got to get to do the work to get to where you can get. And just because they told you how to do it doesn't mean that's going to be the same path for you. Otherwise, I feel it's kind of along the lines of a saying that feed a man and he'll have enough to eat for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. So based on this concept, I would rather have the opportunity as opposed to just receiving a handout. Further, based on the Bible, I wouldn't want to envy somebody else's privilege per se. In the Bible, one of the 10 commandments that I don't believe supports the privilege concept is thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. It says, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, which is his wealth, his ox, which is ability to make money, his donkey, I would say a mode of travel, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. I believe this commandment basically contradicts the idea of white privilege or privilege in general from a Christian point of view. Now you might be mad right now, but hold on. However, I believe the issues that we are really dealing with in America are related to the following commandments. The first one is, thou shalt not steal. Stealing opportunities from people that have earned them is just straight up wrong. That includes home loans, jobs, positions, whatever you can think of. If you have a person that's deserving of it, based on their resume and their interview, and you don't give them that job, that is really stealing from that person, especially if you give it to someone who's less deserving. Now, if you got two people who are equally skilled, okay, it may come down to who's going to be better fit for the team that they're going to be working with. But if they're unequally in one person is higher than the other, and you give it to the person that is, let's just say, white as opposed to being black because they're white, even though the black person is more skilled, that's straight up wrong. And it ain't got to be a black person either. The second is, thou shalt not give false testimony against your neighbor. I look at this as putting people in jail as a perpetrator, and kind of using the concept that all black people look alike. And that, for us in the black community, I think that's one of the most dangerous statements or mindsets that you could ever have, because that means no matter how good I am, no matter how much I follow the law, if some policeman or whoever thinks that I look like somebody else that's committed a crime, and they go shoot me, I don't think that's fair. And their defense is, oh, he looked like somebody else? No, that's not cool. And it's also dangerous. And it's something a lot of people in the black community, including myself, have to worry about. So that's not cool. As far as privilege is concerned, I don't think it's fair to get mad if someone doesn't know their privilege, especially if you can't describe your own privilege. And at best, if you're being presumptive, at best I think you're being presumptive if you think you can just totally describe somebody else's privilege. So in that regard, I'd say let's just give each other grace. If you wonder why I bring up this topic and trying to give you a short version of the story, is I noticed it when I was traveling outside the U.S. and I wasn't, basically on business. And so I learned that when you travel as an American, people automatically think you're rich. That is their perception. But, me personally, I'm not rich. At least right now. But this is based on their perception and their standard of living. So in some situations, what I have, if they have what I have, oh yeah, they'd be rich in their country. But if they have what I have and they come back to the U.S., not so much. So the funny part about it is when you travel into other countries, especially if they're not as financially prevalent as the U.S. It's to me, it's more like a vacation because you may be able to spend less on food there than you are here, or less on other services or whatever that here is going to cost 4 or 5 times as much in another country. Yeah, it'd be nice if you could live there forever, but usually that's just not the case. You just short term. That said, other countries are more expensive than America, so it's a little bit more painful if you go to a country where the dollar's worth this much, but whatever else is worth this much. So now you got to spend more of your money just to make up that difference. And American privilege for foreign countries, American privilege in foreign countries can actually lead you to you paying more than the other people or I'll say the locals in the country. So privilege perception is, I want to say, it's not really fair, but at the same time, privilege is something some people have more privilege than others, but it's hard to discern that. In reality, living in the U.S. is much more expensive than other countries, and so other countries' perception is really far from our reality in a lot of cases. But neither can really change. I can't really change their perception of my wealth, and even though it's true from their perception, but in my mind, I'm like, hey, I'm just trying to make it, and I got to pay my own bills and everything, take care of my family. This reminds me of a saying, never judge a book by its cover. Also, I've seen wealthy people in the U.S. that have the same situation with other Americans. You might hear someone say, hey, to a rich person, or a person they think is better off than they. Let me borrow $2,000. I know you got it. But just because they look like they got it don't necessarily mean they got it. And then you have people who have the fake wealth. They're the ones that want to look like they have money, but they really don't. So they may have a brand new Mercedes-Benz, but they live in a shack. There are people who have the newest clothes, they look fly, but they're in credit card debt up to their eyeballs. So I ask you, how do you really know someone else's privilege when you have people who are trying to fake it, so to speak, till they make it? So I say that perception is not always reality. I'm not saying you're wrong for claiming the aspects of white privilege, but we need to be careful about judging people and our perception of their privilege. But I'd also like to submit to the other races that just because America has made a perception of progress in race relations, and we have had a black president, it doesn't mean that the black community doesn't still have wounds. We're not that far from the generations that primarily dealt with the Jim Crow laws. And then, police violence has really been going on for a long period of time, and unfortunately it's still going on to this day. But the police have really been kind of used as a means of oppression toward black people, it looks like. If you look at a lot of history, we say, hey, treat us human. They say, no, go back home. And so it's not necessarily meaning that the police in themselves had that same mentality, but that's what they were directed to do. All that being said, if I had to define white privilege, I would sum it up as respect, plain and simple. Looking at police violence, being chosen, not chosen for jobs based on race, not getting housing loan opportunities, being, I think it's called red line or something like that, being discriminated against for hair, which I think is still weird, or anything you could think of. I would say that most people, including myself, are just looking for respect. Plain and simple, just respect. Slavery, Jim Crow laws, and lynching were all forms of oppression that not only took away black lives, but opportunities, wealth, and peace of mind. And other races don't seem to have to deal with that as much as we do. You know, like if you were driving down the street and you get pulled over by a policeman, I would wonder if you, as an Asian person, white person, Indian, you name the race, do you feel like your life could possibly end in that moment? Probably not. Not necessarily, not saying it can't happen, but for a lot of black people in the black community, that is a reality. That for whatever reason, they might consider us violent, or we look like somebody else who was violent, and we could die that day as a law-abiding citizen, never been arrested, never got in trouble, follow the law, support the law, and we could still be shot just because we look like somebody that committed a crime, or we appear to be somebody who's more aggressive. So you can't really have a bad day. If you have a bad day and you get pulled over, you have to be still nice. You could have lost your father, you could have lost your mom, you could have lost your job, but if you have attitude with policemen, you can literally die. Just saying. Now, the death of Mr. George Floyd, I don't care if you consider him a criminal, it was just inhumane. Period. Flat out, I think most people agree. However, criminal behavior should not be used as an excuse to devalue a human. They still deserve respect just like us. Now, if they can't respect the laws, then you gotta put them in jail. Hey, that's one thing. Okay, but as a human being, you should still respect them. In fact, the lack of respect or even self-respect may be the reason why they're a criminal. Excuse me. So just keep that in mind. Respect everybody. We even have animal activist groups that fight for the rights of animals. And I read somewhere it's almost like animals have equal rights to humans. They want animals to have equal rights to humans. But they seemingly almost have more rights than black people. If you saw a man putting their knee on the neck of a dog, I think there are a lot of people in the U.S. and in some other countries that would have more outrage about the dog than they would about George Floyd. And I ain't trying to condemn you or anything like that, but I ask you to think about it. Would you? Would you be more outraged about the dog or about a human being with a knee on their neck? So when you think about Mr. Floyd and others like him in comparison with animal rights, it almost looks like animal justice is more important than the justice of the people in the black community. In many ways, I believe we as black Americans are still searching for the dream that Dr. Martin Luther King had spoke of. this is particularly important because he actually said that I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. For some Black Americans, the dream has come true. However, for others, it's just a glimmer. We're seeing the glimmers of hope, but are still waiting for the full manifestation of that dream. So I'd say respect everyone as according to the golden rule. So, but with that said, this has been What Happens When Nice Guys Retaliate. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll talk